Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are all having a good day, and I hope you're ready to kind of learn a little bit more about Android development using the Kotlin programming language. Now, in today's video, I would like to introduce to you guys the idea of a list view inside of our Android apps. Now, basically, the list view is kind of self-explanatory. It allows our users to scroll through kind of a vertical list with their fingers, and it kind of shows more views as you scroll up and down the list, making it very, very user-friendly. So without talking about it too much, I would like to start today's video with a demo as to what kind of application we can build and also what we're going to be working on for the rest of today's video. So let's start off with my screen here. And I have this Facebook feed kind of a mimic application, which allows me to scroll up and down this list right here. And let's kind of count how many rows we have for this application right here. And the first row is up here for Barack Obama. Second row is Mark Zuckerberg. Third row is Steve Jobs. And then we have this final row right here that kind of allows us to scroll horizontally within a horizontal list. So this component right here is just a list view with a couple of different rows. So it's pretty basic. And in order to kind of build this out, which is what I want to show you guys how to do in a future set of videos, we need to start off with something that's a little bit more basic and foundational. And that kind of looks like this right here. So this app is called ListView Demo, and we have a simple list of 5 rows for a couple of different names or a couple of different people inside of our list. And because this only has 5 rows, I cannot scroll up and down. So this is what I want to show you guys how to do today. And why don't we get started with creating a new project, and I'll kind of describe to you guys how a list view works using something called a adapter for our list view. All right, so let's go ahead and start out with a brand new project in Android Studio. I'm using version 3.0 beta 3. You might want to use beta 2 because it's more stable. But anyhow, let's just create a new Android Studio project. I'm going to call it ListView, perhaps LBTA for Let's Build That App. Company domain and project location, you can specify whatever you want. And then I'm going to target the phone and tablet using API 15 so that I can run on approximately 100% of all devices. So that's nice to have. I'm going to hit next. And in here, I'm going to create an empty activity because it's always nice to have pretty much nothing inside of your files in the beginning. And then for this right here, let's call it main activity and generate layout file with activity main and these boxes checked. So with all those options clicked, we can create our project, and you see it kind of ran a couple of different Gradle processes to get my project up and running. And once it is done downloading all of the necessary files, we can start running our application pretty much right away. So how do we run our app? Well, let's just hit this little play button guy. And I have this Pixel API 25 as my emulator. If you guys need to create your own virtual devices, make sure to hit this and then follow the wizard right here. So I'm going to click or double click on that or hit OK. It's going to try to run this application right now. It's building with the Gradle process and installing the APK onto the emulator. And we have Hello World just like this. And I would like to change all of this so that I can see the project inside of this project mode instead of the Android mode. I do this because all of these files right here, the structure of this Project Explorer reflects exactly what I see in the Finder. So the things that I kind of want to open up here is app, source, main, Java, and have this main activity, which is this Kotlin file right here. You see .kt for Kotlin. And we're going to be typing in Kotlin for today's video. And instead of res, we have res layout activity main, which has this text view here that says hello world, and it's kind of placed inside of this constraint layout thing. So I kind of went over all of the kind of introduction of Android Studio in a previous video. I'm going to link that video down in the description below, and make sure to take a look at that video before you kind of get started for today if you are unfamiliar with how Android Studio works. So now that we have our hello world inside of this text view, and we can see it inside of this preview pane on the kind of the right side here, I would like to introduce some kind of way to draw a list inside of my application. So in other words, I would like to have a list right here that has just a couple of names and strings and numbers inside of a text view components. So how do I go about doing that? Well, it's pretty easy in Android if you just use this XML editor. So let me just move this out of the way. Remove the text view, and the text view is gone. I can use something called a list view. So just type in this little bracket guy, hit list view, and for the width, I'm going to use match parent, and for the height, I'm going to use match parent as well. All right, so let's see main activity. Let's see if this will go away. I think it's just going to stay there. Move that out of the way. And let's see what I want to do with my design here. So the list view is already in my entire application preview. If I hit this instant run, it's going to take in that list view and render that inside of my application right now. So you see how it's a blank screen? So the way I can fix that is to kind of show a background color instead of this empty transparent color, which I'm going to use F00 for the color of red. So this is just standard hexamal color, and or hex decimal color, I believe that's called. So if I change this to FF0, I get the color of yellow. So having done that, I can use instant run again, and that's going to show this yellow color inside of my app right now. So that's really good, and that's pretty much how the XML editor works, and it's really fast to launch your changes using the instant run. You can also hit the run button and it'll pretty much execute the entire activity again, which takes a couple of more seconds. But both ways work, and you can use whichever way you feel comfortable with. All right. So how do I now get this list to actually even render out these rows right here? Well, first we need a handle on our list somehow. So what I mean is I would like to somehow inside of my main activity, which is this screen right here, I need some way to modify this list and set up something called an adapter on it. So how do I modify that list in the first place? Well, if I say, let's say, new variable with val of ListView, this is kind of the let syntax in Swift for iOS. So val ListView, this is my constant variable. I need to say find view by ID. And right here, I can just say ListView for the actual view that I'm going to find. And for this guy, I think I need to use autocomplete. So let's just do that. And let me try to import that. So I'm hitting Option Enter, and it just gives me that autocomplete so that it imports it up here. And for this little parentheses, I need to pass in the ID of this list view. So what is this ID? Well, if you go back into your activity main file, this yellow list view, you can give it an ID by typing in ID, and you have to type in @+ID. And this right here, I'm going to call it main list view. And there's a bit of a naming convention for your IDs where you have to specify where it is, followed by an underscore and what exactly the component is. So that's a convention that I'm following for today's video. And now that I have this ID for my yellow list view, you can kind of see it has some sort of template prototype rows inside of the preview. And if you run it, it doesn't really change very much. So if you run it, you can try to run it, but you don't have the ID here. So let's fix this by specifying the actual ID of r.id, and you can say main list view, which if you click in here, brings you back to your list view. Okay, so let's try to apply these changes right now, and you'll see that it's going to run it, and we have the exact same application as we did before. And because we haven't really done much, the changes actually are the exact same thing. So let's see if we can change the background color of the list view by saying background color, and this takes in some kind of color. And how do we get a nice color for this thing to, instead of being yellow, let's make it be a red background color. So let's say val red color equals color. I think that's what I need. So color, and I can parse some kind of color string. So this color string is going to be pound FF0000. And let's see if I can apply the red color inside of my list view by hitting the instant run, and this yellow should turn into a red color. So I think I have too many zeros right here, so you want to make sure all of your hexadecimal color strings are 6 characters. And now upon applying those changes, our application now has a red background for our list view. So that's how that works, and that's pretty simple, right? Now, what I want to do in order to render out some rows inside of my list view so that I can make it look like this is to set up my list view with some kind of data. And this data needs to tell my list view how many rows there are. In this case, there are 5 rows. It also needs to tell it what kind of views I need to render for each one of my rows. So the way to set up this data or this thing called an adapter for my list is to actually create some kind of adapter. So eventually what I want to do is to set some kind of adapter on my list view equals something. So this needs to be my custom adapter telling my list what to render. All right, so good stuff. Now, exactly what is it that I want my custom adapter to be? Well, you have to create some kind of custom adapter inside of your project somewhere. And the ways that I've seen it done mostly for Android applications is to just create some kind of private class within your main activity class. And this means that it's an inner class of your main activity. Just ignore it if you don't exactly understand it right now. And the thing that we want to do is just render something inside of our list. So this private class, we will use something like my custom adapter. And let's subclass something called base adapter for this custom class. And so once you subclass base adapter, you have to actually fix a couple of these errors that show up right here. So the first thing it says is that the class myCustomAdapter must be declared abstract or implement abstract base class member public abstract function getView with all of these parameters. So it might be a little confusing, and I'll show you how to fix these errors. And you just have to implement all of these methods that it's telling you to actually use. So in other words, if I type in getView, hit enter, I get that first method that it's kind of complaining about. And this getView guy is responsible for rendering out each row. And then the next thing it needs to kind of get is this get item. So let's see, get item. And let's just do this. You can ignore this for now. And what else does it need? Well, it needs this get item ID method as well. So get item ID. And well, you can also ignore this. And finally, we need something called get count. So let's say get count, and having these 4 methods implemented inside of my project, I can finally get rid of these, the first red squiggly line under my custom adapter. Okay, so get count, let me just put a comment here, responsible for how many rows in my list, and that's kind of how we have 5 rows right here. And this last guy, I'm not exactly sure why or what the little error is telling me, but the fix for this is to just use parentheses, which means I guess this is the constructor for my class. Anyhow, this is the fix for that. And now my custom adapter can be used as the adapter for my list view. And the way to do that is to simply type in my custom adapter, and you construct it with the empty constructor like so. All right, so pretty glad all of this syntax looks somewhat similar to Swift. There are a couple of different changes and differences between the 2 languages, but they're pretty close in my personal opinion. So let's see how to kind of fix these 2 errors right here and right here. And to make this easier to follow, I'm just going to say p0.toLong. And this p0 is just this parameter right here, and it's usually called position, but Android Studio is not giving me these parameters for some reason. So I'm going to type it in manually, get item right here, and I'm just going to say return test string like so. And these two methods you can pretty much ignore. You have to implement it just to make the errors go away. And then lastly, we need to return these rows here for my list view. So what exactly do I need to implement here? Okay, so this right here is actually the position, and this P1 is sometimes called a view or convert view, which I'll explain in a later video perhaps. And P2 is just the view group. All right. So how do I even kind of make sense of what I need to return for get view for one of my rows? Well, this is pretty simple if you construct some kind of view yourself. So how do I construct a view for get view? Well, I can say val text view equals perhaps text view like so. And this guy has a couple of constructors. For example, it has the context and all these attribute constructors. And I need to pass it in some kind of context. And for some of you guys that aren't familiar with the context, what it means is I need to pass in like some kind of activity for where I'm at inside of my application. And the way to do that is to pass in some kind of context for your custom adapter. So in other words, I would like to pass it in this for my current main activity. And because my custom adapter needs to have this context constructor, I need to just give it a constructor like that. And everything should be okay, except for the fact that I need to use this context later on. So the syntax for Kotlin is a little strange. You have to type in init like that. And you actually have access to this context variable from the constructor. And it's all a little bit magical, but that's how the Kotlin language works. And it does a good job at reducing the amount of things that you have to type. So this context, I want to keep a reference to it via some kind of private variable, which I'll say private val. This is kind of similar to private let. And I'll call it m context with the context class like so. And I need to actually initialize this m context. I'm going to say either this.m context like that, or you can omit the this, it doesn't really matter. And now my context is being initialized. Finally, I can pass this context in as the context of my text view. And then finally, I can say return text view for my individual row. All right, so a lot of typing. And the last thing I want to do is just set some kind of text on here. I think I can just say text. And here is my row for my list view. Now let's see if this works by hitting the run or the instant change. Let's see, open app again. I believe my app is crashing. So let's see, let's hit the run. And I believe I need to implement some kind of count for the number of rows inside of my list. So let's return 5 for now. And let's hit the play again, selecting the Pixel API emulator of 25. And that will get me this red list with all of these text views as my rows for this vertical scroll view. So that's kind of how that works. And I would like to remove the red color now by commenting out this red color and setting the background color. And I believe if I run this now, you'll see a yellow list view. So let's see, the yellow is right there. And I'm going to remove the background color of yellow from the activity main. Hit the instant run again, you'll see the white list view like so. All right, so that's kind of how a list view works. And this is all of the work that you need to use in order to set up a vertical scroll view with a bunch of rows inside of it. All right, so that's pretty much how a list view sort of looks like. And in order to get your list view to work properly, you need to provide it with a couple of things such as an adapter. And the adapter needs to tell your list view how many rows to actually draw out in a vertical direction, as well as what your row looks like and what the view needs to be in order to render out that row. All right, so a lot of boilerplate that we kind of handled in today's video. In the next lesson, we're going to take a look at how to use the XML editor to provide the custom view for each one of our rows. and also to apply some logic to determine what goes inside of those rows, such as the name of the people inside of our list. All right, hopefully you enjoyed today's video. If you want to download the source code for today's project, you can find the link in the description below. And also don't forget to like the video as well as subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. You can also follow me on Twitter at buildthatApp. That's my handle. If you're interested in joining the Facebook group for the Let's Build That App channel, you can find the link down below as well. Until next time, keep on coding, guys, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.